Hello and welcome to round 4 of the 2018 Indian Motorcycles DTRA UK Flat Track Nationals. It's the annual TT event, formerly staged at Kings Lynn, but in recent seasons hosted here at Greenfield TT. It's the mid-season marker in 2018, the 4th of 7 stops on our calendar, and it couldn't be much tighter at the top of the championship so far. Toby Hales and Gerard Bailo separated by just 2 points coming into this event, each having been a winner of a single of the opening 3 rounds, and they line up in direct confrontation for this one, heat number 1. First and 4th in qualifying, and it is the qualifying, of course, that determines the seeding positions and grid positions for round number 1 of the heat races in this knockout format. The top 3 progress from each of the opening 4 races of the day, direct through to the semi-finals. The next 6 will go through to the first of our elimination races here in round number 1. Lining up, as I said then, for Heat 1, it's Toby Hales, Gerard Bailo and Michael Dykstra off the front row, the 3 favourites for automatic qualification. From the middle row, Kai Fort, Richard Roden and James Andrew. From the back row, Sean Kelly, Tom Moore and Sam Hurst. Underway then with the opening race of the day, and the 2 riders off the 2 inside starts it is who've made the fastest start, and it's Gerard Bailo with the whole shot. Toby Hales a little bit squirrely coming off turn 2, under some pressure, coming on to the outfield spur for the first time, but Michael Dykstra couldn't quite get alongside, and now that Toby Hales has found his rhythm, he's starting to attack Gerard Bailo, almost goes into the side of him there as they come through onto the infield section over the jump for the first time. It's Bailo who leads it then, ahead of Hales in second. Third position with Michael Dykstra, doesn't look too confident in this one, and Richard Roden is staying pegged to the back of him as they come over what is the finish line here at Greenfield TT for the first time. As we've seen in recent rounds in 2018, the starting position on the back straight and the finish line on the home straight, that means we get an extra half a lap effectively. 6 lap races during the opening rounds, and as we get through to the semi-final stages, we see another couple of laps added on, building up towards our 15-lap grand final. Overtaking manoeuvre there for 4th position, the number 79, James Andrew, getting the better of the number 70, Richard Roden, who's now relegated down to 5th position. But neither of those positions are going to be good enough for automatic transfer. That will only be for grid position in heats 5 and 6 as things stand, because the top 3 somewhat predictably have broken away. In this one, heat number 1, the 3 riders on the front row of the grid looking set to move through to direct transfer to the semi-final stages. Of course, with the nature of this circuit, with an infield and outfield section, the lap length is significantly longer than it would be at one of our standard short ovals, one of our speedway tracks, for example, at Kings Lynn and Peterborough for the opening 2 rounds, and indeed Redcar for round number 3. We see the riders filter over the jump. That's one of the unique challenges of this Greenfield TT circuit, and very different, of course, likewise to those short ovals. But it's not affecting our 2 favourites for today's event. The current race leader, Gerard Bailo, ahead of the number 20, Toby Hales, in 2nd position. Hales, the winner of the opening round at Kings Lynn. Gerard Bailo, the winner last time out at Redcar, narrowing the championship deficit and looking set to get the better of his direct rival in this one, heat number 1. Bailo, who's won more races than anyone else in 2018 so far. 3 wins last time out at Redcar, 5 overall for the season. And Toby Hales, his nearest rival, with 3 race victories, but is the current series leader by a 2-point margin. He's been doing the job when it matters in the grand final, and Hales will be satisfied enough with 2nd position in this one, heat number 1, because it sees him qualify direct through to the semi-final stages, and also qualifying through Michael Dykstra, the Dutchman, with 3rd position. So it's Bailo, Hales and Dykstra who march on, the 3 favourites in that race, with the front row grid slots predictably capitalising on them and moving through. Good overtaking manoeuvre from James Andrew around the outside of Richard Roden, and claiming 4th position. Roden then relegated down to 5th, but neither of those 2 could make an impression on the top 3 places for automatic transfer. They do, though, have the best grid positions of the riders in that race when they come through to heats 5 and 6. Surprisingly, Sam Hurst restricted to just 7th position behind Kai Fort, but ahead of Sean Kelly and Tom Moore. Remember that we've got intermediate riders mixed in with pro-class riders here, different levels of experience, but it is 3 of the pro-class riders who move through from heat number 1 direct to round number 2, the semi-final stages. Heat 2, not quite as strong on paper as the opening race of the day, but still a couple of our championship contenders. Gary Birtwistle and Richard Mason, the first two riders out onto track there. The number 11 and the number 98 will be lining up on the front row of the grid alongside Chris Jenner. Fantastic performance in qualifying from the number 134 to make it inside the top 12 and therefore earn himself a place on the front row of the grid for the opening round of heats here at Greenfield TT. Jenner, one of the adult intermediate riders, he finished third last time out at Redcar in that class. Middle row of the grid, Wesley Aegis, Paul Young and George Sturgis, and completing the lineup off the back row here, Dan Ridge and Lee Sadler. We were due to see Hubert Basti off the outside of the back row, but he's not ready in time, so it's an 8-rider race only. Down to the first turn then. Jenner's actually made a good start on the outside, but it is the favourites who break away, and Jenner's smart enough to cut back to the inside line as they duel out in front. Jenner's now moved aside, coming through for third position, Wesley Aegis, so a battling performance from the number 111, and coming through at the front of the field, the number 11, Gary Birtwistle, overhauls Richard Mason. Mason has a good record down the years at TT events, a former winner, in fact, of the Kings Lynn TT event. He's relegated to P2 by Gary Birtwistle, who now leads the way. Wesley Aegis will come under some pressure from Chris Jenner, who hasn't been able to use his front row grid slot to maximum effect so far, and Wesley Aegis currently 7th in the championship standings in the adult intermediate class, doing a good job here in third position. Trying to force his way through the field is the number 75, Paul Young, inside the top 10 in the pro class standings, and he's down the inside of Chris Jenner, trying to come through for fourth position, but he can't quite make a move stick for the moment, Paul Young. In his first season with the DTRA in the pro class, he comes around the outside of Jenner and then onto the outfield section. That becomes the inside, and a well-worked move there from the number 75. He takes away fourth position. The top three positions, though, that are all important in terms of direct transfer. And here goes Young again. 2 positions in a matter of a few turns from Paul Young. And in one lap, he's come through from 5th place and outside of the automatic transfer spots and through into third position. He's already beginning to consolidate that third place. So despite not having a great qualifying, Paul Young has made it count in his first heat race so far. He's up inside those direct transfer spots through to the semi-finals. Gary Birtwistle, your race leader, Richard Mason in second. Those two comfortable, as you might have expected given their championship rankings. Birtwistle up in fourth position, and Richard Mason, who was excellent value at Kings Lynn, he is also inside the top 10 in 7th place as things stand. Closely packed midfield in the pro class standings so far in 2018. Only the top 2 in the series standings have been able to break away in the points overall, and Gary Birtwistle is one of a series of contenders for the bronze medal in the 2018 championship rankings. So Birtwistle leading it ahead of Richard Mason. The number 98 has kept him honest throughout. It's still fairly close between 3rd, 4th and 5th positions, with the rest of the field somewhat tailed off in this one, heat number 2. Birtwistle and Mason, you can see the big gap then. Oh, Paul Young's gone down. Young goes down just before the jump on the infield section, and Wesley Aegis will inherit the third direct transfer spot here as Young goes through to the back and looks disconsolately on. I can't even see him rejoining the race to finish this one. He was frustrated as he went down, and a race that looked settled in the second half there has turned on its head with Gary Birtwistle and Richard Mason up front throughout, but Paul Young, after making a real effort to come through from 5th to 3rd position, bins it in the closing stages and gives the last of the automatic transfer spots from heat number 2 to Wesley Aegis, the number 111. An important pass early in the race then from Aegis on Christopher Jenner at the time through for 3rd position. The pair of them were passed by Paul Young. Young coming through for 3rd place but goes down, and he will have to go again in the Eliminator races heats 5 and 6 as Wesley Aegis capitalises and comes through for 3rd position in that one, heat number 2. Just missing out then Chris Jenner off the front row. He's the first of our top 12 qualifiers to fail to make it through automatically to round number 2, the semi-final stages. He'll have to go again in heats 5 and 6. Now on to heat number 3. Some practice starts just ahead of the finish line there for the riders, including the number 136, Martin Mills. He's coming round to the start line. He'll be going off the outside of the middle row, one of the key riders in the Adult Intermediate Championship this season. Martin Mills, a podium finisher at each of the opening 2 rounds, dropped back out of the championship lead last time out at round 3 in red car. It's Matthew Porter at the moment who leads the adult intermediate class. He'll be lining up next time out in heat number 4. George Pickering, Louis Breton and Jordan Miller, the top 3 qualifiers for this one, heat number 3. Rob Meir, Mike Hill, Martin Mills completing the middle row. Jake Mason, Mike Fisher and Gary Inman will be the 3 riders off the back row here. So watch out for Rob Meir on the inside of the middle row. He's up in 5th in the championship standings despite missing the opening round at Kings Lynn. A surprise to see him fail to take a front row grid slot for his opening ride. It is the 3 riders off the front row predictably who lead it around the first 2 turns and onto the outfield spur, but it's Jordan Miller who's hit the front ahead of George Pickering. He loses his footing though coming around the bottom bend, and through comes Pickering to pick it up. So it's Pickering out in front, Miller in 2nd place, Louis Breton in 3rd, and Rob Meir starting to break away from the rest of the group now as he challenges Louis Breton for 3rd position. Meir on the inside line, of course, comes from a speedway background, so he'll be less used to the TT circuits than he will visiting venues such as Peterborough or Redcar that he had seen during his speedway career. It's Pickering who leads us here then, ahead of Jordan Miller after his opening lap pass, but it's Louis Breton who occupies the 3rd of the automatic transfer spots. A great job from Breton in qualifying. We do always see some unusual or unpredicted results in TT events compared to what we've seen so far this season from Breton, who's made 1 appearance and finished in the lower order in Kings Lynn. Has just 4 championship points to his name in the adult intermediate class, but at the moment he's set for a top 3 finish in his first ride, and that will more or less guarantee him his best performance of the campaign in the adult intermediate category if he makes it through to the semi-final stages, which of course represents the top 24 riders in this event overall here at Greenfield TT. And Breton keeping up a good pace here with Jordan Miller, the number 19, who has been well and truly left by the early race leader George Pickering. Of course, nobody knows Greenfield better than the circuit owner, and it's George Pickering who's blasting clear out in front ahead of Jordan Miller in 2nd place. Still Louis Breton in 3rd position, but pursued closely here by the number 500 Rob Meir. We'll see if Meir can get through in the latter stages to earn automatic qualification through to the semi-final stages. Certainly what he needs in the context of the Pro Championship overall. Breton meanwhile out of contention for the adult intermediate category, and this one surely is for pride for him at the mid-season phase. Miller, Breton and Meir closely packed together in the latter stage of this race. Any of the 3 of them could realistically take the 2 transfer spots as they come into the final lap now. Meir's got a lot of speed into the bottom bend and trying to force his way past Louis Breton as they come around the bottom turn. Around the inside it's Meir. Breton forced off the line somewhat, and as they come onto the infield section, Meir has made a good pass there. Probably the most important pass we've seen of the day so far. He's through for 3rd position. He's up into the automatic transfer spots, and Breton will have to go again in heats 5 and 6 if he wants to make it through to the semi-final stages. Good ride there from Rob Meir. He was up against it. He didn't have a front row grid slot. He hadn't done well enough in qualifying to earn himself one, but he prizes his way through. Track craft all important there from Rob Meir, who takes 3rd position ahead of Louis Breton. No doubting the race leader and race winner. George Pickering, once he'd passed Toby Hales on the bottom bend, was away. George Pickering, once he'd passed Jordan Miller on the bottom bend, was away and gone for the race victory. Miller then staying with the pack behind him as Pickering blasted clear, and the race for 3rd position eventually taken by Rob Meir ahead of Louis Breton. Confirmation of the result then for heat number 3. George Pickering, Jordan Miller and Rob Meir earning automatic qualification through to the semi-final stages. Louis Breton just missing out with 4th position. He'll have a good grid choice though for heats 5 and 6. And Jake Mason leading the rest of the pack somewhere adrift in the end of the top 4. Next up is heat number 4, the last of the preliminary races in round number 1 before the first of our elimination races next time out. And this one, a slightly weaker lineup than we've seen in the opening 3 races of the day on paper. As I've said previously, we do get sometimes unusual results in TT events compared to our standard oval racing. And in this one, we've got some of the lesser lights and some of the intermediate riders lining up in heat number 4 towards the front of the grid. Matthew Porter in particular great job in the qualifying stage, the current championship leader in the adult intermediate class, but frankly he's been punching above that and competing with the pro class riders all season in 2018. So Porter, maybe no great surprise that he's among the top intermediate performers here today, but he has the pole position for heat number 4, which might have come as a surprise inside the top 4 qualifiers through to the heat stages here today. Max Hunt and Neil McQueen completing the front row, Joe Banks, Simon Parkin and Scott Faulkner off the middle row, Ronald Shamir, Alessandro Rossi and Sky Adams completing the lineup for heat number 4. Good start there from Matthew Porter. He takes the whole shot. It's Neil McQueen though up the inside of him, and a smart cutback move there from McQueen. He's stuck on the outside though as they come onto the outfield spur, and Matthew Porter almost alongside. We've got a good battle on our hands for the race lead. McQueen drifting it wide on the bottom bend though, and Porter should be able to claim the position with a little bit of elbows out as they come onto the infield section. The closer race now is for 3rd place. Max Hunt starting to drop back from the top 2 and into the group behind him. Let's see if the number 71 Scott Faulkner can try and challenge for a way through. And there's Joe Banks, the number 36 as well, inside the top 5 positions. The winner of round number 2 in the adult intermediate class, a podium finisher last time out at Redcar, runner-up in fact in Middlesbrough, and he's down in 5th place at the moment with Ronald Shamir for company, the number 48. The pack has stayed much closer together in this one than it has in the opening 3 races of the day, and as I said, probably as a result of the lineup for it. As you can see, Shamir still with 2 riders directly on his tail, and a bit of a train developing as it is behind the number 7 Neil McQueen, the number 243 Max Hunt, who at the moment occupies the last of the automatic transfer spots, but Scott Faulkner, the number 71, close behind him and already starting to nibble for a way through for 3rd position. The front 3, as I've said, starting to spread out, but it's behind Max Hunt that the race is starting to develop. And Scott Faulkner over the last lap or so just dropping slightly back from the top 3, and I think this one is starting to settle down now. Neil McQueen not too far ahead of Max Hunt. Hunt has had a good season, looked particularly good earlier on in the campaign at the second round of the campaign at Peterborough, and Max Hunt is one of those adult intermediate riders. Picked up 9 points in fact at round number 2 at Peterborough, his best performance of the season so far. Sits in 13th in the championship classification for the adult intermediates, but didn't make it into the top 36 last time out in Redcar. Didn't take part in that event. So still close for 2nd and 3rd places, but I think our qualifiers are settled. Again, we're going to see the top 3 on the starting grid qualifying through as the top 3 from this race. We've seen in the last 2 races 1 change to the top 3 between qualifying and the heat race, so only 2 of the riders outside of the top 12 are going to make it through direct to the semi-final stages. The other 10 will be 10 of the top 12 qualifiers. So things following the form book as things stand. And as we come to the checkered flag for heat number 4, it's Matthew Porter then who wins it over the line ahead of Neil McQueen for 2nd position. Neil McQueen, the pro class rider, making his 3rd appearance of the season and having scored at each of the opening 2 rounds, looking to do so again in championship points in his 3rd appearance, the 4th round of the season. But good win there from Matthew Porter, the adult intermediate rider, getting the better of the pro class rider, Neil McQueen for 2nd. Max Hunt, another of the intermediate riders, takes 3rd, and then Scott Faulkner drifting away in the end from the top 3, taking 4th position ahead of Joe Banks. So an early bit of psychological advantage taken by Matthew Porter as he comfortably sees off his nearest rival in the adult intermediate championship. Realistically, Porter has looked almost untouchable in that class this season, a comfortable winner at the opening round in Kings Lynn, a finalist in fact overall at Kings Lynn. And there's his pass again for the race lead on Neil McQueen, taken early on. McQueen had made a good cutback coming off the 2nd turn to head Porter, but Porter was not to be defeated and in the end took a comfortable race victory in heat number 4. The first of 2 round 1 elimination races is heat number 5, and there are no less than 5 pro riders due to line up here. Remember, in the round 1 elimination races, only the top 6 from each will remain in the competition. The rest will be eliminated in the lower rankings of the day, the bottom 12 positions in the overall standings, and championship points, of course, will be awarded depending on class in those terms. So we line up for heat number 5. James Andrew, Louis Breton, Richard Roden and Jake Mason off the front row, 2 pro riders on the outside 2 gates there. The middle row features 3 pro riders, Kai Fort, Mike Hill and Sam Hurst on the inside of Martin Mills. And on the back row of the grid here, Sean Kelly, Gary Inman, Tom Moore and Mike Fisher. Well, as you can see at the moment, neither Mike Hill nor Gary Inman are up at the line. It looks as though we're going to have a 10-rider race here for heat number 5. So that narrows the odds on being eliminated slightly, of course, with 6 of the 10 now making it through. Who will be in the unfortunate 40%? We'll find out as we prepare to get underway with heat number 5, the first of our elimination races here at Greenfield TT, the 4th round of the 2018 campaign. A lot of edginess on the line. It's an important big pressure race, and finally we get underway. Great start from Richard Roden, crowded out on the inside line. James Andrew, a disastrous start for him. He's pushed down to 4th position. Louis Breton locks it up slightly, coming off the top bend, but manages to hold on for 3rd position. Breton then down in 3rd place ahead of Andrew. Sam Hurst has made good progress. He's up to P5. This is crucial for him because he hasn't had a great season. He's outside the top 10 as down. Down goes Sean Kelly. The number 33 falls there on the inside line, just coming onto the infield section as Breton runs wide now around the top bend. The action really coming alive as we get underway with the elimination phase of the competition. Breton then down to 4th position. Andrew recovering. 5th place is with Sam Hurst. He's inside the qualifiers as things stand. And just looking back to see Martin Mills, there it is, who occupies 6th position. So we were down to 10 starters anyway. We've lost another with a fall for Sean Kelly, who's on the infield. And it's only going to be 3 of the 9 now who are eliminated as Sam Hurst makes a big lunge from way back on Louis Breton. And Martin Mills comes through down the inside, and Breton's lost 2 places in 2 turns there. He tries to duck back to the inside, the number 138 heading onto the outfield section. Can't find a way through there. So Breton has got beaten up as this race has gone on. He's now on the fringes of automatic qualification. He's got to watch out that he doesn't drop any more positions here. Mason it is who leads it. Roden in 2nd position. 3rd is still with James Andrew. Sam Hurst has made it up well into 4th position. It's Martin Mills now occupying P5 ahead of Louis Breton. And we'll see how things work out in the closing positions of the top 6, because these are the all-important rankings for qualification, of course. A little bit of an error there coming onto the infield section for James Andrew as he tries to hunt down Richard Roden, one of the pro-class riders, the number 70, who was the fast starter in this race, but has dropped backwards now from Jake Mason. It looks as though he and Mason will both be moving safely through as we head into the second half of this race, with Mason having seemingly locked this one down, the number 444 on his way towards a first race victory of the 2018 season. Roden in 2nd, Andrew in 3rd. They've broken clear of Sam Hurst, who doesn't look too confident in 2018. He's got Martin Mills directly behind him, and at the moment still inside the qualification positions is Louis Breton, despite dropping back as this race has gone on into the final lap now. Mason still leading it. He's just got to stay error-free ahead of Roden in P2 as Hurst runs really wide there into the bottom bend, and the leaders rejoin the infield section. Over the jump for the final time is going to be Jake Mason. Close battle further down the order. Louis Breton really starting to come under some pressure now as we come towards the checkered flag. Mason it is who wins it then. Over the line in 2nd position, Richard Roden. James Andrew in 3rd, Hurst in 4th position. Mills gets 5th, and Breton does just about hold on for 6th position there ahead of Kai Fort. So it's Fort who is eliminated. The first pro-class rider to be eliminated here at the Greenfield TT is the number 40, ahead of Tom Moore, Mike Fisher, and of course Sean Kelly, who fell in the early stages. 2 non-starters to that race who also bow out at the earliest possible stage, heat number 5. But the big story of that one, both Sean Kelly in the adult intermediate class sat up in 5th, the winner of red car. He's eliminated with a fall, and Kai Fort from the pro class eliminated there in heat number 5. So the second of our round 1 elimination races, heat number 6. You can see on the back straight the riders already starting to make their way round, and Hubert Basti there, the number 2, is out onto track. So after missing his preliminary race, he didn't feature in heats 1 to 4. He was a non-starter in heat 2. He'll come out onto the track for the first time and straight into the fire here with an elimination race, heat number 6, the last of our round 1 races. Look at the lineup for this one then, and it's Chris Jenner, Scott Faulkner, George Sturgis and Joe Banks off the front row. The middle row will feature Dan Ridge, Ronald Shamir, Lee Sadler and Simon Parkin. And the back row will feature Paul Young, Hubert Basti, Alessandro Rossi and Sky Adams. So surprisingly, 2 pro-class riders off the back row of the grid here for this heat number 6 elimination race. In the case of Paul Young, of course, that's because of a fall. Sky Adams was the lowest of the qualifiers, 36 qualifiers through to today's event. Lining up for this one then, heat number 6. 6 qualifiers once again. We saw frantic activity in the early stages of heat 5. Will it be the same in heat 6? Jenner's made a good start from the inside. Chris Jenner, the number 134, gets the whole shot. George Sturgis trying to go all the way around. That'll give him the inside line as they come onto the outfield section. Smart move there from the number 155 to hit the front. Battle for 3rd place. Joe Banks trying to come around the outside of Scott Faulkner. I think he's got the move done, but Faulkner has the inside ground as they come onto the infield section. Joe Banks, though, it is who holds on to P3. He's got plenty of experience on motocross style action, of course, as he races in mini bike racing, and he holds on for 3rd position as they come over the jump. Faulkner then relegated down to 4th position. Paul Young from the back row of the grid is already up to 5th, so that's great progress from the number 75 and important for him as a pro-class rider if he wants to keep his racing up and running here today. In fact, he's now come through for 4th position on Scott Faulkner and is right on the tail of Joe Banks to challenge for 3rd. Every pass is important in terms of determining seeding position and therefore grid position for the next stage of competition. So although heat points aren't being scored in this format anymore, each position gained is worth a better grid slot for the next stage in the knockout format. Young looking to the inside of Banks. I think he's got the inside there. Banks covers it off quite well, and Young is going to have to wait another couple of moments, but he tries to come around the outside of Banks over the jump. He locks it up over the jump and has to settle back down to the inside line. Banks is defending 3rd place well. The best defensive position we've seen so far here today. Young tries to go all the way around the outside onto the outfield section. He loses his footing momentarily. He mustn't get caught in an error while he's battling for positions he doesn't really need. The top 6 are all moving through. This quartet are all moving through. Banks relegated down to 4th position. Young's now going after 2nd, down the inside of Chris Jenner. Young making good progress here. This is going to improve his seeding no end because he came into this race with really poor seeding, having fallen in his opening ride, and he's working on it here, but every time he gets out of shape coming into that bottom bed, and he's got to be very, very careful indeed. Paul Young not to fall in the closing stages, going after George Sturgis now. Sturgis moves to block, covers it off on the top turn. Young goes back down to the inside line. He's going to try and get a move here, but Sturgis looks over his shoulder and has the measure of him coming into the final lap, or does he? Young has a huge overspeed as they come over the finish line to enter the final lap, and he surges past down the inside. Sturgis relegated to 2nd position. Sturgis only too happy to settle for 2nd place now and confirm his progression through to the semi-final stages. But what a ride this has been from the number 75, Paul Young, through from the back row after a fall last time out in the opening round preliminary stage. He comes through for a race victory. The number 75, his first race victory of the campaign, his first race victory since joining the DTRA, and full credit to Paul Young for a from-the-back effort there in heat number 6. Young with a late pass on George Sturgis, an overtaking manoeuvre that he didn't need to make, and he risked coming down to another fall that would have seen him eliminated here today, but he was willing to take that risk for an extra position, for an improved grid slot for today's semi-final stages. And it is Paul Young who's the first of 6 qualifiers through from heat number 6. He marches on alongside George Sturgis, Chris Jenner, Joe Banks, Scott Faulkner and Simon Parkin, just taking the last of those qualification places. And as you can see, the rest of the pack awarded an overall finish in today's event from 25th position down. But a good series of overtaking manoeuvres there from Paul Young, who demonstrated that he's not afraid to mix it even on this TT circuit, down the inside of George Sturgis, the last of those moves to give him the race victory in heat number 6. The round 1 heats completed, and that was all about finding out which 24 riders would make it through to the semi-final stages, and the knockout races continue thick and fast, with the first of 2 semi-finals determining 10 automatic qualifiers to today's grand final. And the way that the draw has stacked down, the top side of the draw filtering through to semi-final number 1 as it does. This is by far the stronger of the 2 semi-finals on paper, at least. We've got 2 race winners from the opening round, Gerard Bilo and George Pickering. They will have the first choice of starting positions. And then Toby Hales, another of the championship contenders, he looks set to slot in immediately alongside them, and that will leave Jordan Miller with the outside of the front row. For the middle row, we've got riders who finished in 3rd position in their opening rides. Just looking through who's made it through onto the middle row, Michael Dijkstra and Rob Meer for this one, semi-final number 1. And Meer is going to slot in position on the inside here of Michael Dijkstra. So the riders at semi-final stage, of course, have the choice of starting position. So Meer has slotted in on the inside. Let's see where Mason now chooses to go. The number 444, Jake Mason, of course. We've got Richard Mason lining up in semi-final number 2. Jake Mason's gone for the outside of that middle row. That leaves Richard Roden with the inside of the middle. It's been a good effort from the number 70 so far this season, as he looks for his first championship points haul of the 2018 campaign in his 3rd appearance of the year. From the back row of this one in semi-final number 1, James Andrews gone up to the inside. Directly alongside him here will be Sam Hurst, the number 116. Then now moving into position, Martin Mills, and that will leave Louis Breton with the outside of the back row. There he is, the number 138, slotting in to position. So in terms of intermediate riders, the focus here on Martin Mills, currently 3rd in the championship standings, but the bulk of the intermediate qualifiers will line up next time out in semi-final number 2. A power-packed first semi-final. 5 positions for the final up for grabs here at the Greenfield TT. It's Bilo who takes the whole shot. Challenge around the outside line from Toby Hales, but it's George Pickering who slots into 2nd position. Hales then down in 3rd. It's Rob Meer in 4th position, and at the moment Michael Dijkstra holding the last of the automatic transfer spots ahead of the number 19 Jordan Miller, who sits outside of the transfer spots in 6th position, with Richard Roden challenging him for 7th. Separate fights up front, but these 3 all should be moving safely through to the grand final. The top 2 finishers in this one, semi-final number 1, will have a front row grid slot for the final. So it is important for Toby Hales to try and make a pass here on George Pickering. Pickering wayward as they come in to the bottom bend once again, and Hales trying to gain ground on George Pickering ahead of the infield section and towards the pits turn. It is the number 117 using this as an opportunity to break clear. He looks nailed on for a front row grid slot in the final, Gerard Bilo, and if Hales starts from row 2, if he finishes behind George Pickering, that's going to be a real opportunity for the Spaniard who leads out in front here. Hales running very, very wide this time around, and that really is going to give Pickering an opportunity as they come onto the infield section once again. Bilo looking completely comfortable as they head into what's starting to develop into a crater now on the pits turn at the end of the jump, and that left-hander where we come back on towards the oval part of the circuit. In fact, the majority of the TT these days not bearing much resemblance to the oval. Formerly turns 1 and 2 with the oval, then we cut into the infield section. Now we've got this outfield spur, and you can see what is effectively an access road now to the TT circuit, and that is part of the original oval here at Greenfield. We'll see more of that later on here this season. Well, this race is starting to settle down now. Hales hasn't had an answer to George Pickering. He keeps looking up wider around what is turns 1 and 2 effectively. The first turns on the outfield spur after the finishing straight, but each time he does that he loses ground before gaining it back again through the infield section. Hales now looking to the inside line on the top turn, on the pits turn, but again Pickering has that one covered. Further back down the order, Meer coming under some pressure from Michael Dijkstra, the number 581, gaining ground here in the battle for 4th position, and this will be worth a row on the grid as well for the grand final. So Dijkstra will be keen to find his way through to 4th. As I say, that'll be worth a position on row number 2 for the grand final. And Dijkstra currently occupying the last of the automatic transfer spots to the final. So Jordan Miller, who has dropped back from the top 5, who was 6th position early on and still holds that place, will have to go again in the last chance qualifier to try and make it through to the grand final here at Greenfield TT. Hales again as close as you like to the tail of the number 38, George Pickering. Both of these riders have spun plenty of laps here at Greenfield, but Hales not able to find a way through. As Meer defends again from Michael Dijkstra, holding the inside line. The Dutchman tries to go all the way around, and that will give him the inside line for the next turn, but he gets a little bit sideways there, Dijkstra, and it's Meer who still has the momentum. Hales again attacking onto the infield section, but as it turns back across the front of him, Pickering has it covered. It's going to be Bilo then for the race victory, and a comfortable one at that in semi-final number 1. Ahead of George Pickering in second. He'll be on the front row alongside Bilo. Hales will be on row number 2, and it's Rob Meer who holds on in the closing stages ahead of Michael Dijkstra, but only just. And Dijkstra will have to go off the back row for the grand final, and that really is going to be a handicap for him. Jordan Miller, though, and downwards, the riders outside of the top 5 will have to go again in the last chance qualifier. And in each of the 2 semi-finals, the rider who finishes out at the back is eliminated. And the rider to finish in last position in that one, semi-final number 1, was Martin Mills. He's eliminated in 23rd position overall here today. And, well, disappointment for him as he fails to make his bid to the last chance qualifier for a second opportunity to make it through to the final. Jordan Miller, James Andrew, Richard Roden, Sam Hurst, Jake Mason and Louis Breton will go again in the last chance qualifier to be joined by the riders in 6th to 11th positions in this one, semi-final number 2. So as I said previously, semi-final 2, the weaker on paper of the 2 semi-finals here. And we have no less than 7 of the adult intermediate riders. So this could almost be an adult intermediate grand final, because we saw Martin Mills eliminated last time out. So that's going to determine his finishing position in terms of the intermediate class. And he doesn't face too many of his intermediate rivals at this stage of competition, because they're all facing one another in this one, semi-final number 2. So that's just one of the quirks of the draw. It's unfortunate for Martin Mills, because it is going to massively affect his point score. Who knows what he might have been able to do up against riders of the same ability, but up against majority pro riders last time out, he was unable to find his way through to the LCQ. So frustration for Martin Mills, and his rivals will try and take advantage of it here in semi-final number 2. Line up in full then, riders settling in with their starting position choices. Gary Birtwistle, former race winner, he goes off the inside of the front row. Matthew Porter, likewise, a race winner in his preliminary heat. Porter, the winner of heat number 4, goes off gate number 2. Richard Mason and Neil McQueen will complete the front row. The middle row, 3 intermediate riders, Wesley Agers, Max Hunt and George Sturgis. Paul Young slots in between them off gate number 3 on the middle. And the back row, another 3 intermediate riders, Chris Jenner, Joe Banks and Simon Parkin, with Scott Faulkner, the number 71, in amongst them as well. So the favourite for qualification here will be Gary Birtwistle off the inside of the front row. Watch out for the number 98, Richard Mason, as well. Matthew Porter's made a good start. He gets moved up wide coming off turn 2. Max Hunt, where's he come from? The number 243 from the middle row is up to 2nd place early on. Oh, and we've got a collision. Down goes Neil McQueen, the number 7, and I think he caught the back of the number 98, Richard Mason, in that as well. So still down at the moment, the number 7, and we wait to find out the race is stopped. The race is stopped. Richard Mason was the first to see it, and he wasn't surprised by it either. He was on the lookout for that red flag after he will have felt that collision down into turn number 1. It looks as though that's Simon Parkin, I think, the number 139, who is caught up in the midst of that. But it was indeed correctly identified, the number 7, Neil McQueen, who went down as they came in towards the top bend, in towards the outfield spur. And we're going to see it again here. Porter had done a good job to get back around the outside of Max Hunt to try and challenge for 2nd position, but he had to back out of it. Hunt claiming the position. They're 3 abreast onto the outfield spur. Young gains the ground, and Young was up to 3rd position there, and I think he just trapped Mason across the front of Neil McQueen, and it's Richard Mason who was in amongst that, but it was Neil McQueen who went down, and Simon Parkin taking the avoiding action. So the riders are being called back up to the start line for the restaging. They had assembled on the pits turn to await further notification, and we'll see whether the number 7, Neil McQueen, is fit and able to take his place in the restart. It certainly looks like he wants to. He's got a front row grid slot, so he's got everything to lose if he doesn't manage to get back up to the start line, because he's in line for a potential qualification through to the grand final here today. And Neil McQueen, who picked up 7 points at the opening round at Kings Lynn, has only managed to score 1 championship point since then, so he'll be desperate to get up to the line and capitalise on the opportunities that this draw has presented him in this knockout format. Here we go then. Gary Birtwistle off the inside of the front row. Matthew Porter alongside him. Richard Mason off 3. Neil McQueen, if he gets there, off 4. And McQueen, you can see at the back of your shot there, is coming towards the line. So the number 7 will go again for the restaging. Bravely, Neil McQueen returning to the start line. A reminder of the middle row then. Wesley Agers, Max Hunt, Paul Young and George Sturgis. The back row, Chris Jenner, Joe Banks, Scott Faulkner and Simon Parkin. So it looks as though we've got everyone back in position, which is always good to see at a semi-final stage. You'll remember at Redcar we lost a series of riders to injury through crashes, but they're all back up and running here today. Porter it is who makes the fastest start, but he gets trapped in between Birtwistle and Richard Mason. He then cuts back to the inside. That's going to leave him on the outside for the outfield spur, but he manages to hold on there to 3rd position. Challenging around the outside of him initially, it's Neil McQueen as Gary Birtwistle finds a way up the inside of Richard Mason coming off turn 2 and onto the infield section. Paul Young making progress. Remember, his seeding position, even for the semi-final stage, has been affected by what he did in his first ride, and Young has had to work his way through. He's up to 4th position. That'll be enough for a 2nd row grid slot in today's grand final. The last of the automatic transfer spots at the moment held by Max Hunt, so this is a great performance from him. He looks set to move through to the final, whereas Neil McQueen, who started on the front row, has been relegated down to 6th place, and as things stand would have to go again in the last chance qualifier. A lot of demand on man and machine in this format when we come towards this stage, particularly for the riders who don't make it through direct from the semi-finals, who potentially have to go again in the LCQ and then the final as well. Hunt then is outside at the moment. He's in 5th position. He should be marching on, and the battle for 5th and 6th position will continue to rage towards the checkered flag. Long lap lengths, as I've said previously on the TT, but also a longer race duration when we get to the semi-final stages. We're up to 8 laps, so plenty of time for Richard Mason to plot his course back to the front, but also time for Neil McQueen to build it up here on the tail of Max Hunt. Hunt down in 13th position in the Adult Intermediate Championship. This is going to be a giant killing mission for him. Neil McQueen, of course, a pro rider in 2018 at the moment, outside of those automatic transfer spots. Good news story here for Matthew Porter. He sits in 3rd, and as things stand, will be the top seed among the adult intermediate riders through to today's grand final. As McQueen looks to the inside again, this time on the pits turn, on the tail of the number 243 Max Hunt, still trying to find a way past for an all-important top 5 slot. But it's Birtwistle who leads out in front, Mason in 2nd, Porter in 3rd, Young and isolated 4th position. These 4 should all be moving through, and the battle, as things stand, is for 5th place. 2-4-3 versus 7. Hunt holding on. It's going to be a great result for him in the context of the Adult Intermediate Championship as McQueen locks it up, and surely that has ended his challenge for P5. And I think that settled down this one. Semi-final number 2, seemingly decided by an error there on the pits turn from Neil McQueen. McQueen quickly trying to gain back lost ground on Max Hunt, but I don't think that it's going to be enough. His time is against him here, just 2 laps remaining now for Neil McQueen to try and find a way past Max Hunt. And likewise up front, Gary Birtwistle ahead of Richard Mason, the number 98 trying to find a way through. The number 240, Matthew Porter, has kept them honest throughout, but he has gradually dropped back as the race has gone on. As you would expect, as the top adult intermediate rider, I think it's only a matter of time before we see him in the pro class proper next season. If he were a pro class rider, he would have already scored pro points in 2018. He has done a good job of mixing it with the pro riders. He's not going to get to the top 2 pros in this one though. Semi-final number 2 is going to be a race victory for Gary Birtwistle, who comes around the pits turn to take the checkered flag ahead of Richard Mason in 2nd. Matthew Porter gets 3rd. He's the top adult intermediate rider. Then it's Paul Young. He'll be going off a middle row grid slot in today's grand final. A great recovery from him after his non-finish back in heat number 2, a win in heat 6, and a 4th place in semi-final number 2 for him. And it's Max Hunt who holds on for the all-important last automatic transfer spot to today's grand final, proving that his 3rd place finish in heat number 4 wasn't a flash in the pan, and that lightning does strike twice. Good job from Max Hunt, who takes 5th place in semi-final 2. Neil McQueen, Scott Faulkner, Wesley Agers, George Sturgis, Joe Banks and Simon Parkin will go again, and Chris Jenner finds himself down in 12th position in that one. He is eliminated in joint 25th position here today. So joint 23rd position here today, and in terms of the winning time, semi-final number 1 was the faster of the 2, so Martin Mills will get the verdict and get 8 championship points in the adult inters. Chris Jenner will only take 7, but that's almost just for the record Neither of those two riders will make it through to the LCQ and are therefore eliminated before today's grand final. So our 10 automatic transfer spots have been decided here at Greenfield TT, leaving only 2 positions up for grabs for the 4th final of the 2018 campaign. The LCQ then, a look up the lineup, the front row already settling in. Jordan Miller, Neil McQueen, James Andrew and Scott Faulkner, so 4 pro riders off the front row. Then Richard Roden, another of the pro riders, lining up off gate 2 on the middle row. On the outside of him here, Wesley Aegis. It's Sam Hurst who is next to choose, inside or out, gate 1 or gate 4, and he slots in off the inside, leaving George Sturgis to complete the middle row off the outside gate. 4 more riders then to select their starting positions. It's going to be tough for them from the back row, particularly in this field. No less than 7 pro riders lining up in this race, so the first of the pro championship points will be awarded here. In fact, at least 5 championship point scores in the pro class will be decided in this race, even if we get 2 pro riders moving through to today's grand final. We're also going to see an important result in the context of the restricted class, because we could well see the 3rd position on the podium settled here, with 2 adult intermediate riders already having made it through to the grand final. So plenty to settle in this one. The last chance qualifier, which gets underway with a great start from the outside from Scott Faulkner, the 71 with a brilliant getaway. But it's the 19 Jordan Miller who takes it, and he locks up slightly coming off the 2nd turn, and that gives the momentum to Neil McQueen, who comes through for 2nd position. The all-important 2nd place, of course. Faulkner dropping down to 3rd, James Andrew in 4th position, Richard Roden in 5th, and surprisingly down in 7th position, Sam Hurst, although he hasn't had a great day or indeed a great 2018 season so far. Miller locks it up on the pit's bend. Neil McQueen close, but doesn't want to risk moving off the line to challenge, knowing that the number 71, Scott Faulkner, is right behind. The top 3 packed closely together. Only 2 qualification positions up for grabs, remember, and it's only a 6-lap race, so errors are punished severely. And there have been a couple of errors already in this race from Jordan Miller, the number 19, looking good out in front, but not looking totally comfortable. And Neil McQueen is close, waiting for an opportunity to present itself. He's not going to try and make one, knowing that 2nd position would be good enough. Scott Faulkner coming under pressure now from James Andrew. Even if Andrew picks off Faulkner, he's still got to get to Neil McQueen. The front 4 have broken away. Richard Roden and Sam Hurst in 5th and 6th positions respectively. That's going to be worth championship points, but it's not going to be worth progression through to today's grand final, because as I said, you expect the 2 qualifiers now to come from this lead quartet with the laps ticking away, and in only a 6-lap race, they will run out quicker than you might expect. Jordan Miller it is who leads, again locking up into turn number 1. He really is struggling on that top bend, but manages to hold the inside line, hold position. He's locked up on a few occasions during this race, and that's what's kept the 3 riders directly behind him on track, but none of them have been able to land a blow or find a way through so far. Miller holding on to it then. He's got to stay error-free in the closing stages now, the final lap. Neil McQueen in 2nd place. He's managed to break a little bit ahead of Scott Faulkner. McQueen runs him wider on the bottom bend, but he's left plenty of room on the inside here for Faulkner, and there's an opportunity for the 71 to take the last of the transfer spots. Miller and McQueen at the moment occupying the qualification places, less than a bike length ahead of the riders in 3rd and 4th places. Andrew looks for an outside move. He's going to go for the cutback off the final turn. It's a drag race down to the line, but he can't get there, and he's frustrated with that, because he certainly had the pace to match the 2 eventual qualifiers, Jordan Miller, Neil McQueen, Scott Faulkner and James Andrew throughout that race, running nose to tail. But after Neil McQueen held off an early challenge from Scott Faulkner, there was no change in the top 2 places. It's Jordan Miller then and Neil McQueen who move on. Scott Faulkner will take 3rd position in the event overall, and that will be worth 5 championship points. I did say that 5 positions as a very minimum would be decided in the LCQ here in the pro class. 4 championship points then to James Andrew, 3 to Sam Hurst, 2 championship points going the way of Jake Mason, and Richard Roden dropping back in the latter stages. Well, there it is again, the fight between the number 7 and 71 over the last transfer spot to today's grand final, and the man who takes it is Neil McQueen. Round 4 of the 2018 DTRA UK Flat Track Nationals here at Greenfield TT. And we've got the top 10 point scoring positions in the Indian Motorcycles Pro class and the top 2 positions in the adult intermediate category to be settled in this grand final. 15 laps, so the longest race of the day. Gerard Bailo settles in off the inside starting position. The winner last time out at Redcar and the favourite for this one. He's been strong all day. Gate number 2, alongside him, Gary Birtwistle, the number 11. Then it's George Pickering, the number 38, and the number 98, Richard Mason. Toby Hales, the current championship leader, only lines up off the middle row. He has got the inside of the middle row, and he'll be aiming to make that count down into the first turn. Matthew Porter, the top seed from the adult intermediate category and the current championship leader, goes off gate 2 on the middle row. Then it's the number 500, Rob Meir, and it looks as though Paul Young, the number 75, is going to settle in off the outside of that middle row. Michael Dijkstra, currently up in 6th in the championship standings in the pro class, only manages to qualify on the back row of the grid. He's on the inside of the back row, the Dutchman. Alongside him, the number 243, Max Hunt, probably his best performance of the season so far. The number 19, Jordan Miller. And the last of our qualifiers from the LCQ, the number 7, Neil McQueen. So Gary Birtwistle has won each of his 2 qualifying races. Gerard Bailo has done likewise, the winner of semi-final number 1. The 2 favourites off the 2 inside start positions. Watch for Hales from the middle row. He hasn't made a good start. It's Gary Birtwistle who takes the whole shot. Gerard Bailo up into 2nd position. It's Birtwistle then who leads the way as they come onto the outfield section for the first time, ahead of the Spaniard Bailo. 3rd position is with George Pickering, the number 38, and relegated further down the field, it's Toby Hales, only now getting through on the inside of the 240, Matthew Porter, and in line to challenge for 4th position against Richard Mason, who occupies the place as things stand. Porter then doing what he needs to do in the context of the adult intermediate championship, with Max Hunt the only other adult inter stranded further down the order as things stand. But the race is going on out in front between Gary Birtwistle and Gerard Bailo. Bailo looking for his 2nd victory of the 2018 season. Gary Birtwistle, who hasn't made it up onto the podium yet this season, he's pushed aside and Bailo hits the front. Brilliant ride from the number 117 to lead us, and the top 2 are starting to break away. The only 2 riders to have won 2 heats apiece here today are pulling clear out in front. Bailo stretching his advantage, but he locks it up and hits a bump, and down goes Gerard Bailo, and the pack is filtering past him. He's stranded well down the order here. He remounts the bike just as Max Hunt comes past him, the adult intermediate rider, and that is going to leave Gerard Bailo right at the back of the pack, and with the vast majority of the field to make his way past. You may have already seen that Neil McQueen, the number 7, has pulled up on the exit of the pits turn, so he's out of the action, and that's one less rider for Bailo to pass, I suppose, as he just picks off Rob Meir there. So he's making swift progress here, up into, I think that's 9th position already now for Gerard Bailo. It'll be interesting to see how far through the field the number 117 can get. He's now onto the tail of the number 75, Paul Young, and looking for a way through as they go around the pits turn. But up in front, the 3 race leaders really need to try and break here as Hales tries to capitalise on the fall for his main championship rival. He's going all the way around the outside of the 98, Richard Mason. It gives him the inside for the switchback, but he can't capitalise on it. Mason closes the door. He's smart on the infield section, the number 98, Richard Mason. The race leader breaking away is Gary Birtwistle. George Pickering locks up across the front of Richard Mason. Mason tries to come through onto the outfield section, but he can't do so. He's trapped on the inside line. He locks up, and Hales has got a good run here around the bottom bend. Mason tries to block him out. Hales goes the long way round again. Richard Mason manages to shut the door and hold Toby Hales at bay. Hales really needs to get past. He needs to start attacking George Pickering, and he'll want to try and hunt down the race leader Gary Birtwistle. But this race looks, to all intents and purposes, to belong to the number 11, and this is really going to throw Gary Birtwistle back into the championship hunt as he leads comfortably ahead of George Pickering in 2nd. 3rd place is still with Richard Mason. Toby Hales sitting 4th, and then a big gap to the rest of the group, and it's Gerard Bailo who is the next man. He's the man on a mission. He's passed Matthew Porter. Porter won't be too bothered about that, to be quite honest. He's still the leader in the adult intermediate class in this race, and he doesn't need to do anything other than beat Max Hunt, which he's doing comfortably as things stand, to take the 20 championship points in his category. Bailo has now started to bridge the gap. Could he even find his way onto the podium? The laps are ticking away, but it's the longest race of the day, and there is still time for the Spaniard. Bear in mind, you've now got the top 2 in the championship in 4th and 5th positions in their championship order. This is a massive opportunity for some of their rivals to gain in ground, and not least Gary Birtwistle, who's on his way towards the championship, 20 championship points. is the number 11 then, who still leads ahead of George Pickering. Richard Mason occupying third place. Toby Hale still trying to find a way through, but he's going to be separated from the podium as things stand for the first time in 2018. Hale's the only rider to have made a podium in each of the opening 3 rounds, but as things stand, he's going to be denied in round number 4. Birtwistle leads it, Pickering second, 3-way fight for third position. That's where the focus is on Richard Mason, just ahead of Toby Hales, and with Gerard Bilo gaining on them lap by lap, he could still be a contender for a top 3 finish. Hales thinks about a move on Richard Mason, but now he's got to start being really strategic and really tactical, because every time he passes Mason, he's got to watch out for Bilo behind him. Bilo loses footing again, coming into the turn where he fell earlier on in the race, and Hales clashes with the side of Richard Mason, so determined to try and find a way through. He forced the front wheel down the inside of Mason and almost collected, well, he certainly didn't collect the back wheel at very least of Richard Mason, but neither rider was too much impeded by that collision, and they continue on in third and fourth places, albeit with Gerard Bilo gaining from that. The top 2 have broken away. It's Mason now holding up Toby Hales quite visibly, backing him into the path unintentionally of Gerard Bilo of Spain. Bilo, they're almost side by side now for fourth position. Bilo goes for the outside line on the pit turn, cuts back to the inside. Hales hasn't left any manoeuvring room on the inside for his main championship rival. Will he now focus on keeping Bilo behind him, or will he continue to attack Richard Mason for third position? It could be a crucial extra couple of points for Toby Hales if he can find a way through. It's still Mason holding third position as they come through the infield section once again. Hales less than a bike length behind. Bilo less than a bike length behind. Hales just up ahead of him. On that last lap, Hales hasn't really lost any ground to Gerard Bilo. We're in now to the final lap. The top 2 positions look settled. The race is over third, and Hales has found his way past Mason. Toby Hales comes through for third position. Richard Mason relegated to fourth. Hales set to gain significantly in the championship ahead of Gerard Bilo. Bilo down in 5th place, looks for a move on Mason, and down goes Bilo. For the second time in the grand final, the number 117 will remount the machine on the side of it to make the final turn off the pits bend. He should hold on. He's ahead of Matthew Porter. Even if Porter passes him, it's not going to make any difference here. Looks as though we've had some confusion with the flags, so Gary Birtwistle, our race leader, is going to complete the final 2 turns. The marshals telling the riders to continue on. I was sure we'd seen the yellow and black quartered flag on the previous lap, and now we're going to see the checkered flag, and a little bit of late race confusion there, but either way it won't change the result. It'll be a race victory for Gary Birtwistle. Second over the line, George Pickering. Toby Hales will get third with a crucial late race pass on Richard Mason, and Gerard Bilo will only collect 5th position in the final. 11 championship points, and Hales with that late race pass. I said the 2 championship points for third position could be crucial. He gains 3 on his main rival Bilo here today and reasserts himself at the top of the championship standings. Frantic activity in the final there, provoked by the fall early on by Gerard Bilo. From there, the race was between Toby Hales and Richard Mason for third, but the spice that battle was given by Bilo fast approaching was outstanding. Excellent racing, as we tend to see in grand finals with the DTRA, and it's Birtwistle who becomes our 4th different winner of the season to take away the championship points from Greenfield TT. So it's Gary Birtwistle then who will celebrate his first grand final victory of the 2018 season, and in the process he moves up into third in the series standings. He's a realistic contender for the title once again, with only 3 rounds remaining. 4 different winners in 4 rounds, and we'll see who wins next time out in the Amman Valley. A 2-round race weekend, that's going to be crucial as we look back at the images of Gerard Bilo coming to grief. A spectacular crash. The front wheel had scrubbed out on the rough stuff on the inside of the white line, and then just at the wrong moment when he was locked completely sideways, Bilo's back wheel hit a rut, and that was enough to propel him from the machine. A decent recovery then just to take the 5th position in that grand final and 11 championship points. Here's a look at what that race result does in the context of our 2 championships, merged of course in terms of racing. In the adult intermediate class, a race victory for Matthew Porter. He actually finished 6th in that grand final, and he extends his championship lead up by another 10 points to 13 overall. Meanwhile, in the DTRA UK Flat Track Nationals, the pro class, Toby Hales scores 14. He maintains his run of consecutive podiums, certainly the most consistent man of the season so far, but that's not necessarily going to favour him once each rider's lowest score of the campaign is subtracted at the end of the 7th round. Gary Birtwistle becomes our 4th different winner this season, and in so doing moves 3rd in the series standings, moves above George Pickering, albeit by just 2 points, and the top 4 are now a breakaway group, well clear of Rob Meir and Richard Mason, who moves alongside Meir into 5th in the standings overall, and nowhere near close enough to Toby Hales, our series leader. 3rd position at round 4, the leader by 5 points heading in to the Amman Valley next month.